Well, joining me now on 891 Mornings is Gerald Celente, publisher of the TrendsJournal, and the trends for 2014 don't look particularly good for young people. Now, Gerald, we've just had some unemployment figures for young people here in Australia cause some concern, but I see over in the United States that even if you go on to college and you have a college degree, you're still in trouble. Can you explain what's going on?
Yes, a number of things. The jobs that college grads are getting are paying, on average, 50% of them are paying wages that you only need a high school diploma to have to get that job. So they're not paying very high wages. Overall, the college-educated are earning about 5% less than they were 5 years ago if they do get jobs in professions that suit their degrees. The other thing that's happening is that college grads, on average, have about $30,000 US in debt by the time they get out. That's really actually on the low end. And it's taking them, on average, about 20 years to pay off. So essentially they're indentured servants. They passed laws, actually began under the Clinton administration in the late 1990s and then followed through. Actually, Vice President Joe Biden pushed for it when he was a senator from Delaware, which we call the loophole state because the corporations get away with anything they want over there by having registered in Delaware. They passed laws that make it virtually impossible for a college student to declare bankruptcy at any time and get away from paying that debt. So the jobs that are being created, as you look back to 2013, for example, the vast majority, about 90% of the jobs created in the United States in 2013 are temporary work jobs. That's a fact. So they're moving into a workforce that, number one, is shrinking, and number two, the level of pay is going down. Again, just sticking with the data, the majority of the jobs being offered in the United States are for waiters and waitresses, for bartenders, for home health care workers, and for retail. They're declining in manufacturing, they're declining in construction, they're declining in all the fields where they pay higher wages.
If the youth of today are the future of tomorrow, I mean, people always say we should invest in our youth, then what message is this sending to young people in America? Are they turning away from college degrees now and university?
No, they're still going in because they feel that's the only way they can get a job. And actually they're getting a lot of these degrees in worthlessness. And I'm not saying this to demean the importance of the degree, but the fact is that if you get a degree in anthropology, if you get a degree in art sciences, you know, these are wonderful things, you know, or gender studies, you're not going to get a job. So most of what they're offering in college is really dead-end education that's not applicable in the real world. And it's not only in the United States where this youth unemployment rates are so terrible. You know, they vary within the continents, but the World Bank is recording record levels as high as 60%. And, I mean, you look at, you know, whether it's Croatia, Greece, South Africa, Spain, Tunisia, you're looking at 50 to 59%. You're looking in places like Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Chile, Czech Republic, you're ranging between 10 and 19%. This is a global issue. You look at Egypt, for example. Most of the population are young people with a futureless future. So this is where your revolutions start to happen. Because here they are, they're young people, you know, testosterone is really at high levels, and they have no future ahead of them. And when you're young, you don't know your limits.
Well, look,
you're going to start seeing a lot of volatility.
Well, Gerald Celente, publisher of the TrendsJournal here on 891 Mornings with me, Ian Henschke. You mentioned revolution there. Of course, the big revolution that we've been witnessing on our screens has been in the Ukraine, and I know that a lot of that began with the student population there. Any thoughts about what's happening there with this, what appears to be a struggle between Russia and Europe over the Ukraine?
That's exactly what it is. And, you know, when we sent out the Winter Trends Journal, the feature story was Wake Up Call. And again, this was over a month ago. Actually, February 5th we sent it out to the subscribers. And the cover story was the protests in Ukraine. So we saw this coming, and we wrote that it was going to get much worse. And this is when it really was only about a month old, when we began to write about it in January. And what's going on there is very simple. And again, this is not conspiracy theorist. This is fact. Anyone could go to YouTube, and they could put in the name Victoria Nuland, Nuland. And she's the Assistant Secretary of State in the United States. And she's giving a speech at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. And she's being hosted by Chevron. You can see her standing there right next to the nice big Chevron insignia. And she's talking about how the Ukrainian people have to move into Europe. Now, this is somebody from the United States, by the way, telling Ukrainians that they have to move toward Europe. And she tells them that their path to the future is to follow the design set forth by the International Monetary Fund and to join the European Union. Now, this is an American saying that another country should join the European Union and follow the course set by the International Monetary Fund. What's going on over there is very simple and very plain. This is about the EU and the United States trying to gain more and more strength into Eastern Europe and weaken Russia. Again, this is not a conspiracy theory. It's right there for everyone to listen to. And they go on, by the way, in beginning these verbose talks about how we have to spread freedom and democracy. I thought people were old enough not to believe that two-bit line anymore. And again, she ends it with, by the way, not my words, hers, that the United States has already spent $5 billion in Ukraine. So you can see where that money is going. It's going toward the destabilization of the government. And again, it's one corrupt government was there already, another corrupt government before that, and a new corrupt one to follow. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
But on that point, though, the young people that are out there fighting, they do have altruism, they do have freedom in their hearts, and you can see them out there saying, we want to get rid of the dictators. So, I mean, is there a possibility that this revolution, if you like, coming from the youth, could put in a better government?
Not from what I'm seeing. They're bringing in the old regime, and that's who's in charge now. And you already saw it when they brought out the former prime minister out of jail, and she had a prominent role in it already. Again, it's here come the new boss, same as the old boss. Let's put this into perspective. Again, whether it's going into Russia or going into the EU, it's not my concern. I only look at the facts here. And the fact is, why would anyone in their right mind want to join the European Union? Do you want to be like Greece? I got it. How about like Spain? Hey, Italy is great. You talk about youth unemployment? We're talking over 50% in Greece and in Spain. You look at Ireland, Portugal, Italy at over 40%. Why would anyone in their right mind want to go into the European Union? What this is also about, it's strategic bases that Russia has in the region with their naval bases, and it's also about the intricate lines of gas and pipelines, oil pipelines running throughout Ukraine. This is all about business. It's not about democracy or freedom.
Now, Gerald Celente, on a very positive note, though, your latest Trends Journal talks about altruism finding a heart on the internet. Now, I found this story fascinating, the fact that you can actually give to people by just clicking on sites such as thegreatergood.com.
You know, it's like what you're talking about with the revolutions going on. Most people want a better future. And you know, one of the sayings I just came up with a couple of days ago, and I'm sure it's not unique, but it's just the way I'm thinking of it. And I was thinking to myself, why is it that so few could rule and ruin the lives of so many, and why is it that so many allow so few to rule and ruin their lives? Most people are good and decent within themselves. Yeah, everybody has their little trips that they do, but everybody wants it better for a lot of people. And we do see this new altruism as a counterforce to what's going on, as well as the very real possibility of a renaissance, a restoration, going back to something that is better. Look what's going on in Italy. They just brought in this guy Renzi. You know, they call him Fonzie over there. Here's a guy with absolutely no track record. He's been on the public dole all his life since 1996, has never had a real job. He's as empty as all the rest of them. And yet you see each nation, one after another, in a country near you, being destroyed by small political parties and power-hungry people. So we see the altruism and new renaissance. This is the counterbalance. The way I look at it, 80% of the people don't have a clue what's going on. And there are the 10% that are the destroyers and the 10% that are the builders. This is the time for the builders.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because if you look at the points you make, Gerald Celente, in your Trends Journal, you say that in the last year, online giving, in other words, people using the internet to donate money, has gone up by around 14%, which is about 10 times what normal charity giving is. So people, because of the internet, are seeing problems out there and saying, I'd like to try and help. I'd like to try and fix it. You hear about crowdfunding, all sorts of things that are going on. So is it likely there is a strong strand of hope out there at the moment?
Yes, there are. And again, it's the people. It's the individuals making the change, not the political leadership. And again, anybody could argue who's behind these revolutions, whether it's in Venezuela. And by the way, that's another one that's being generated by a lot of young people protesting, or what went on in Ukraine or is going on in Ukraine, or the indignados in Spain or the pitchfork movements in Italy. You know, it's everyone, and particularly the young people facing a futureless future. So yes, the future can be bright if another one of my thoughts recently is that we need moral might, not military might.
By the way, though, I should point out to our listeners that the Trends Journal also showed that the richest people on the planet got even richer in 2013. So while there is a sign that people with a bit of money are giving it away to other people, the rich maybe aren't, or are they?
No, they're not. They're not giving it to the right positions. You know, as I look at it, of course, being of Italian descent, I keep asking myself, where are the de Medicis? Where are those that want to use their money to create art and beauty? And to me, art is the way of finding the true meaning of the human spirit. And when you look at the Renaissance and what it brought, yes, the good and the bad of it, but a lot of greatness. And to me, that's what's missing right now, is the reignition and a flame within the beauty of the heart and art. And that's what the rich can really do. They could turn it around just as the royalty of the past did it by putting so much into art and beauty. That, to me, is what's missing now.
Well, in fact, you give a quote in your Trends Journal from Bloomberg Personal Finance. It says, the billionaires of the world are asking what should they do with their money in 2014. You're saying, well, they should give some of it away.
Yeah.
Well, Bill Gates has done some of that, hasn't he?
Well, again, you look where the money went to. You know, a lot of it's in the drug business, you know, with the vaccines and this. And you look at the new person that's running his operation and the foundations. She's right out of the drug industry. You know, so it's more about business as I see it. Again, where is it in art and beauty? Look, we have the United States over here. Everybody knows about the decline of Detroit, which used to be called the Motor City. And you look at the photos online of a decaying Detroit, and you see the grandness of the buildings that are going into the ground, the architecture, the art that went into these grand structures. And look at the junk that they build now. Look at the new buildings they put up in every city near you. Ugly glass structures that are really cheaply built. And you look at the big box stores, you have all the pleasure of walking into a large self-storage unit to go shopping compared to the grand department stores that they used to build. Quality, art, and beauty do not fit into a bottom-line mentality, and that's what's taken over the planet, is the bottom line.
Thank you very much for your time again, Gerald Celente, publisher of the Trends Journal.